Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Larry Metz with DQE Communications. We are the premier regional fiber connectivity provider in Western PA. We have about 3,000 route miles of fiber. We're connected to pretty much every major data center in the region, 1,400 plus on-net buildings, and the cloud as well, internet services, et cetera. It's my privilege today to introduce Jim Gillespie of Gray Matter Systems. Gray Matter helps manufacturers, people in the water and energy industries achieve operational excellence through better use of their data. So with that, cue Jim.
Great. Thanks, Larry. We're also a customer of Larry's at our office up in 100 Global View too, so appreciate that. Got to watch Tim's speech this morning and Chuck's question as a follow-up, and really appreciate that because I think it sets us up pretty well. Our premise is there's a big problem with big data, particularly for manufacturers. So Chuck's question, how do we take all of the information that's sort of locked up in the factories at the lines and, I've got to get the clicker, and get it to be used. So real excited to be here, have some cool stories to share with you guys. And here's the basic problem that we see. Everybody's collecting data, tons of different data sources. There's SCADA systems, there's historians. We just saw the OSI Pi presentation next door here in the alternative track. There's Hadoop clusters, there's data lakes, there's Excel spreadsheets, there's databases, tons of different stuff. But nobody is acting all the way to solve, at least almost nobody. So our research and some of the industry experts that we've talked to think of it this way. About 90% are collecting, which is pretty cool, right? Pretty good. But about 30% are analyzing, and I mean really taking the time to analyze, really taking the skills to analyze, and having a system to work with. And we'll talk a little bit more about all three of those things as we go through our chat. About 10% really get to the root cause of the problems, and about 2% actually are executing all the way to the business outcome that they were looking to do with the data that they collected in the first place. So we think there's a big problem. Not to worry, we're going to talk through some of the solutions to that we see for 2017. First story of the chat, we had a client just recently. They were getting 20% rejects out the end of their manufacturing process. They had a data war room set up. They had the number one priority of the CEO. They had professors from the local university doing all sorts of professorial things. Is that a word? They had so much data they couldn't actually come to the conclusion of the root cause of why they were getting bad parts out the end. That's, I think, symptomatic of sort of the stuff that we see out there in the industry. So our challenge to the group here today is 2017 is the year to start acting. We think we can do better. One of the reasons I got into this business in the first place is started to share with Chuck earlier. As a young engineer, a project came across my desk. We were 100% over budget at a big steel manufacturing company I worked for, and no business outcomes that were signed up for in the appropriation request. So I think that's something we can do a lot better. As Larry mentioned, Jim Gillespie from Gray Matter Systems. I'm the CEO and co-founder. Born, bred, raised Pittsburgh. I do not have the Steeler logo up like John did. Ringgold High School, if anybody's a Joe Montana fan, might be out of fashion these days. I went to Carnegie Mellon, so literally stayed here throughout the whole time. Somebody asked me at lunch, does Gray Matter come from Breaking Bad, or were we first? So 25 years ago, it actually comes from area of Carnegie Mellon. We were pleased to win a couple awards last year. Pittsburgh Business Times, one of the better places to work, Inc. 5000 named us. For 25 years, we've been connecting people to their critical infrastructure and assets in manufacturing, energy, water, wastewater. We're squarely in what's now called the industrial IoT space. And to steal a line from country music, we were IoT before IoT was cool. So we think it's pretty cool times. We think about transforming people's operations and empowering the people to be the best they can be through the better use of data. We think about digital transformation, cybersecurity, air-proofing the operation, and we sort of think about those verticals that I mentioned already. In general, we help people unlock these data dollars. We look to leverage the investments that are made already, lay out a strategy to build on those things and deliver real outcomes. We've got the pleasure to work with some of the largest companies in the world, and we get to see and do some pretty cool things, and I'll share a couple of those stories of why we think some of that's relevant. So the industrial internet is real. It's kind of a term that's been coined, in the past year or so. A couple of conversations from last year I wanted to share with you guys that I think are relevant. First one was with Mickey McManus, Pittsburgh guy, ran Maya Design for many years. So imagine some of you guys know him from his work here at the Tech Council. I think Audrey spent some time with him as well. But he was at our user group, and he's got a couple of paradigm shifting ideas, one of which is called trillions. Trillions of things producing data. It's much like what Tim was talking about in the general session. But we think that's a really big deal for the industrial world, and really it's forcing everybody to adapt, which leads me to conversation number 2. Was with Jeff Immelt from GE, and we went to the Minds and Machines event in San Francisco in November, and we were lucky enough to have breakfast with Jeff. And he said just what Tim was talking about. Even a company with the size, scope, and resources of GE has to do things differently today, and for the first time he's developing a complete partner ecosystem just to deal with this issue of lots of data and what do we do with it all. So how cool is that, breakfast with Jeff Immelt anyway? So the question we threw out to discuss and hopefully answer or put some ideas on the table today is, why aren't manufacturers making better use of the data they have to take action? We think there's a couple of issues, 3 we'll throw out here today. The first one is time, and time's a big deal because of the differences in the operations. Almost everyone's a snowflake, so you've got dissimilar equipment, dissimilar situations, dissimilar things. The time it takes to combine the data from those various sources I mentioned before, and a lot of times the questions that you set out to answer aren't even relevant by the time you get the answer together. Second is skills. Talked a lot about data science. What was his joke this morning about the extroverted guy is the guy that looks at the other guy's shoes? So the point here is it's expensive skills. They're rare, they're hard to get, and often they don't have the subject matter expertise to combine with the personality that it takes to synthesize the problems that we're talking about. So I think that's an issue. And then finally, it's systems. So better systems gives your team more time to analyze, more time to dig into root causes, more time to synthesize. We think of a good system actually lets our customers play operational Moneyball. Has anybody seen the movie with Brad Pitt? A couple people, or read the book. So you don't want to be the people, the old scouts in the meeting that are saying, don't put that batter in because he's got an ugly girlfriend, he's got low self-esteem, we don't want him. And then they turn to Jonah Hill, and Jonah Hill looks at the data and says, no, 427 against left-handers at night on AstroTurf, put him in. So it's the conclusion at the time to make a difference to the outcome that you're looking for. In this case, maybe win a ball game. We think 2017 is the data breakthrough year. People are going to start getting more and more benefits from all these investments that they've already made. And there's a couple of trends here that are empowering this. Moore's Law just continues to democratize connectivity and availability to compute power, which increases the power and decreases the cost, of course. The second trend that we see is industrial cloud platforms really maturing. A good example of this that we've seen is the Predictive platform. Tim mentioned it just for a nanosecond this morning, but Predictive by GE, I heard a pretty good one the other day I can share with you guys. Predictive is to the factories as iOS or Android is to the smartphone market. So it's a place to drive innovation. It's almost an operating system for factory innovation, process innovation, and I think an enabling technology here. So our premise is the way we're really going to get more value fast is to create a set of digital twins. Digital twins, a digital representation of an actual asset or machine or a process. And these platforms will really empower the people to do things that weren't possible before. Sensors are much easier to be created. Edge devices are much easier to be created to get data directly to these industrial cloud platforms. Another story we can share, we're doing some really cool co-innovation work with Washington, D.C.'s water group. So we're monitoring some of their pumps that had never been monitored before right near the Potomac River. And we're letting them know that they're breaking, not that they're broke already. The other thing we're monitoring is the water fountains that are all around Washington, D.C. that the school kids would drink from by the mall. So water quality to make sure that the water's clean at the right time. And again, clean water for kids. Hard to argue with that as a benefit. A lot of people ask us, does it really work? Who's doing it? What kind of stories do you have to share with real results? We got a pretty good one here. The digital thread, the digital twins coming to life. The G transportation plants, not sure if you guys are familiar, but in Grove City, they actually make the locomotive engines. Not too far from the outlet malls, if you drive by 79 at all. But engines in Grove City, the overall locomotives in Erie, and some really cool benefits that are coming. Significant cost out, significant predictability increase, a big reduction in downtime, and then some soft benefits of increased collaboration, predictive maintenance, and some things. So building, so clean water for kids and now building trains. So I think even like, what would that be? Sheldon Cooper would be jealous possibly, right? So we get to work with some of these big companies, and what's both good and bad about the big guys is they've got lots of resources to do things, and up till now, this concept of some of the investments are only things that the big guys really can pull off well. Procter & Gamble has 300 data scientists that pull over the collected information, so lots of money. GE has built a digital command center in Atlanta to look at all their turbines across the whole energy market that they've sold to all these different energy companies. 50 million, 80 million by some count, 50 million-ish. So really expensive to build one of these things on your own. We say in 2017, these digital command centers using the digital twin are possible for the masses. And we think of it like this. If you're an owner-operator with lots of similar pieces of equipment or assets in your fleet, you have the ability to optimize them to best in class. So in this case, utilization and performance, all the outliers are moved over time to best in class. We think it's even a more interesting, possibly more interesting proposal for people that are supplying machines or things to the industries. So just like GE does turbines to the energy market, people that are doing material handling machines to the plastic industry, for example. You got the ability to use this data, flip your revenue stream, and sell your product as a service instead of your normal machine and service contract model. One of my friends is looking at the concept of selling uptime on his machines instead of machines, so transforming the revenue. A pretty good story that we had on this is Schindler. Does anybody know Schindler? They make, among other things, elevators. they're transforming the revenue model from elevators and elevator service contracts into lifting as a service. So a building owner would pay, X thousands of dollars to lift the people every day or month or year. So we think the concept of the digital command center is now possible. It's available and democratized. The three issues are now mitigated. So time is mitigated by managing things by exception instead of having to pull over all of the raw data, and with automated workflows to take you through some of the outcomes that you're looking for. Machine learning mitigates the skill sets. So instead of specialized data scientists, you've got maybe normal electrical engineers like Tim and myself to deliver the answers. And then finally, the systems are mitigated by this digital command center in a box concept. So we think 2017 is going to be the year of accelerating the digital twin, digital thread concepts. Megan and Leah and Carrie were asking me how I could ensure I get some credibility with you guys over the twin issue. I actually have 16 years of twin experience. So this was first day of the learner's permit in the fall. So I not only have actual twin experience, I've got a lot of digital twin experience as well. And thank you for your time here today.
Any questions?
Hi, how are you? I'm Renee Bastone from the Northeast Data Hub. So I've been speaking to some of the folks in the IoT space, particularly some of the larger players, and as you alluded, they've done a great job at managing their internal data, but there seems to be a couple of very large unsolved challenges. Number one is sharing data outside of the walls of a GE or a UTC, et cetera. The other is the reticence of their clients to actually share data back with the parent corporation for any of the reasons that you discuss. And I'm curious what you're seeing, because I have I'm sure, a much smaller sampling of answers than you do.
Yeah, I think the challenges that you mentioned are real. I think the cybersecurity technologies are maturing and becoming more trusted, and I think it's the business model is the answer to the technical challenge. So if the service contract is written that your turbine will be monitored and your service contract is priced accordingly because you let the monitoring service happen, it's the only way to get rid of that sort of reluctance to share data. So they have to see a real business benefit in opening the kimono, so to speak. But I think it benefits both parties to collaborate, in a non-specific way to get the performances that we sort of had in our one little fancy animation. Thanks to Leah and Megan for that too, by the way.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.